Hello everybody and welcome to Gene's Reviews from a regular dude, where I do trailer reactions, I react to YouTube videos, I review YouTube channels, occasionally I'll review a movie, but really, I just do whatever the hell I want. Well, hello everybody and welcome to Gene's Reviews from a regular dude down in the basement. Today we're going to check one out from Top 5 Scary Videos. This is Top 5 Scary Reddit Horror Stories that turned out to be true.
Scary stories are all fun and games until they stop being stories. The things that most rational folk would just brush off or ignore or otherwise forget to double check can definitely come back to bite you in the butt if you're not careful. Most would assume that folks just go on the internet and tell lies, but believe it or not, some stories posted on the World Wide Web are actually true. This can be particularly terrible when you read into some of the details. So let's delve into some true-to-life tales of terror with the top 5 scary Reddit horror stories that turned out to be true, Part 3. Coming in at number 5, Bug-Eyed. We love a good pun from time to time, but this one might just stick with me for the rest of my life. As a person who's worked at swimming pools and summer camps, I've seen all sorts of different stuff get into people's eyes, from sticks, rocks, chlorinated water, bird droppings, and of course, bugs. Hell, I had a gnat fly into my eye while I was biking just last week. But these are all things that can be removed relatively easily if you're careful. They're not trying to make a home in your ocular orb. This story from Reddit user Oscar Divine makes me want to scream, and you're about to find out why. It goes like this. I've told this story before. I'm an eye doctor and I had a patient come to me with an infected eyelid 2 other eye doctors tried to treat and failed. They were dumping all sorts of medicine into it and it wasn't getting any better. At this point it was swollen and painful for weeks with no improvement despite being on tons of meds. Apparently neither of them thought to flip the lid upside down, you know, the gross trick that some kids do with their upper eyelids. It was a painful maneuver for her very swollen eyelid, which might explain it. Anyhow, there appeared to be what looked like a visible abscess inside the tissue with thick, gooey material. I thought I'd give it a nudge and I saw it move. This wasn't an abscess, it was something else. I managed to remove it quite easily in one whole piece. It was a fly larva. The patient told me that she had a bug hit her in the eye a few days before she got this infection. I removed the larva and within 2 days the wound closed and she was 100% recovered on basic antibiotic eye drops. Yes, I do have the photos for this case for those interested.
No,
I, for one,
I'll pass.
am not interested. Walking around with a larva in your eyelid for weeks and not bothering to figure out what it actually was? What if it was like wriggling around in there? What if it decided to start crawling around and looking for food? This is the kind of body horror I would expect in a movie, not real life. Although, what is real life if not horror? Let's keep moving.
I've never had anything like that, but I remember when I was a little kid, I got a tick in my leg, and we was visiting my grandparents, and my grandfather took a stick match and he lit it, blew it out, and then put it on top of the tick, and it just backed right out. And then he just stomped on it. And that was it. Because they say that you should never pull them out because they bury their head in there, and you pull them out and their head will stay in. So he just set that match on the top of the tick and it just backed right out. This is kind of off point, but I love his shirt. I want that shirt. Looks like it's from Texas Chainsaw Massacre at the end, when she's in the back of the pickup truck driving away, and she's all crazy.
Coming in at number 4, we've got some unwelcome tenants. This is a personal fear of mine played out right before someone's very eyes. The idea of a silent, sneaky, and altogether uninvited individual deciding that the nooks and crannies of my home are free real estate just drives me nuts. And the worst bit is you're living in blissful ignorance of this until something finally sticks out and other patterns reveal themselves. Those bumps in the night, that wasn't the house settling or whatever other explanation your grandmother might have given you. That was a squatter moving around in the dark. All that food seemingly going missing. It sure wasn't partially forgotten midnight snacks or your friends being greedy, if you know what I'm saying. Those times the motion sensing lights went off in the middle of the night. Not mice, raccoons, or squirrels. Boy, oh boy. User IEAMS85 told their tale in a thread about this particular occurrence. For about a year, I lived in a house with 4 housemates. We had a pretty big backyard with a garage and a tool shed that we never used, ever. We also had motion detector lights. 2 of my housemates were very superstitious and believed in ghosts and spirits and such. They also liked to get high on different substances. The lights in our backyard would go off randomly. I assumed it was animals, my housemates were sure it was a ghost. One of them told us she'd seen a man ghost looking through our window when she was high on shrooms. They thought it was scary. I thought nothing of it because, well, yeah. A few nights later, drunk me thought I saw a man through the mesh door to the backyard. I just thought my mind was playing tricks on me because my housemates kept talking about the ghost. Eventually I moved out to go back to my home country, and about 6 months after that I FaceTimed with one of the housemates. Turns out we hadn't seen a ghost. A homeless man had been living in our tool shed for God knows how long. Gave me the creeps for sure. All this happening pre-pandemic is horrific, right? But imagine it happening now. You're always home, and they have smaller windows to get out of their hiding spot. What if somebody died while in your home because they couldn't get enough food or couldn't get outside, and you didn't even know until you smelled something funny? That's not an experience I ever want to have. Coming in number 3, we've got...
At least with that guy, he wasn't in the house. He was in the shed, in the yard, so...
Pus brain. Not 2 words you really want to see together, right? Well, just listen to this story from user Slappy McSlappenstein. It speaks for itself. When I worked in healthcare, I had a patient who got a sinus infection. He stopped taking his antibiotics after a few days because he felt better. His sinus infection came back with a vengeance. When he got to the emergency department, he was presenting with stroke symptoms. The infection had spread to his cranial cavity. There was so much pus that it was twisting his brain. No one thought he would survive the surgery. The family was advised to expect the worst, but amazingly he actually survived. He ended up needing 3 more surgeries to wash out and spent almost 2 months in the hospital. Wow. So take your full dose of antibiotics, people. How are we feeling about this one? A little headache? Checking in on your sinus health? Because that is absolutely bonkers. This dude essentially had to have a brain enema because of the filth built up in his dome. That stuff comes back with a vengeance, like he said, if you're not careful. So listen to your local healthcare worker and finish your antibiotics regimen. Coming in at number 2.
I had a sinus infection once, and it was so bad that it's right in this area right here on both sides. It like swelled up. It looked like a chipmunk or something, the way it swelled up. It was really, really puffy. And this is going to be a little bit gross, and I'm sorry, but I would push on it and just push it up. And I was taking antibiotics, by the way, but I would push up and it would go down into my nose, and then I could blow it out. And that relieved it a little bit, but I was taking antibiotics, and I kept taking them till they were gone. It was basically just amoxicillin. So...
We've got the suffocation station. In a lot of creepypasta stories, folks who are left near some dangerous chemical or enclosed space often go mad. You know, self-mutilation, murder, hideous mutations, the works. In this story though, the folks put in an unsafe situation don't end up doing a whole lot of that. They just die, and they die quick. We live in a cruel world, and if the folks running companies aren't careful or tend to cut corners, a lot of bad stuff can happen. Take it from Reddit user Animator Spaminator. I heard this from my grandpa. He used to work in the oil/gas industry. His father actually owned the company. Anyways, they had these huge tanks full of some deadly gas that's heavier than oxygen. Some guy went down to measure the size of the tank, suffocated, and died. Another guy found him at the bottom, wanted to help him, and he went down after him, suffocated, died after falling off the ladder down. Third guy does the same. Eventually, my grandpa finds 3 dead bodies at the bottom of a large tank, all having suffocated on this toxic gas. They have vents in these tanks now, which is good. Yeah, the poor grandpa. Imagine strolling into work and discovering not 1, not 2, but 3 dead bodies, all because of an invisible assailant that robbed the oxygen from their lungs. Yep. And finally, at number...
I used to work at a meat packing plant, is another story. And I drove what's called a shuttle truck. You've seen those big yellow trucks that back the trailers into the doors? I used to drive one of those. And they had a ammonia leak in the plant, and it actually came outside. And so I drove the shuttle truck around to the guard shack where the guards parked, and they had the scales so the drivers could weigh their trucks and their trailers before they left. And there's a big cloud of that ammonia, and I thought, well, I can make it into the guard shack. It's no problem, you know. And I got out of the shuttle truck and started walking into the guard shack, and that hit, and I was holding my breath, but I had to take a breath. Man, I about collapsed. I was almost crawling into the guard shack. That was so bad. They had to call ambulance because one guy did pass out in the plant. He was okay. He ended up being okay and everything. And since I was exposed to it, they made the ambulance check me and everything to make sure I was okay, but I was fine. It just, man, there's nothing like that. Ammonia is strong.
One, we've got the Outback Backpack Killer. If I was ever to visit Australia, I would be on the lookout for killer animals, bugs, and temperatures. In fact, killer people probably wouldn't even cross my mind. However, as this story shows us, murderous lunatics can be anywhere at any time. User Passometer has this story to tell. I met a guy who had been traveling Australia with a couple friends, hitchhiking around as many of us have done. One of his friends told him that they were near his distant uncle's house, whom he'd never met before. He got a phone number from a family member, and as they had hoped, the uncle offered them a place to stay. He picked them up in town and drove them out to his rural property way out in the bush. They said he seemed like a pretty normal guy, friendly and cheery. When it was time to set up a place to sleep, the uncle took them to a closet that was totally full of sleeping bags and bedrolls. They didn't think much of it at the time and all grabbed the kit and set up on the living room floor. They stayed a couple days and nothing out of the ordinary happened, but afterwards the uncle drove them to the bus station and they continued on their way. About a year later, the man was arrested and charged with several counts of murder. He was the man who was picking up young hitchhiking backpackers and slaughtering them. The guy who told me this story was 100% certain he had slept in the sleeping bag of one of his victims. And now this guy has to walk around for the rest of his life with the knowledge that he slept in a death sleeping bag.
Wow.
Definitely the kind of story that ends up as the central focus of a true crime podcast. So the world doesn't look so sunshiny now, does it? After spending about a year or so indoors,
Was it Wolf Creek kind of about that?
far away from other people, some folks might just opt not to return to the planet at large. And after hearing these stories, I don't really blame them. So what'd you think of the list? Do you like my picks? What's the scariest true story you've ever heard? Make sure you let me know down in the comments.
Yeah, I really want his shirt. Stare into these eyes. All right, this joke today, I'm going to put a little disclaimer right here. Because this joke has some bad words in it, but I'm going to try and clean it up as much as I can. Little Johnny sits down next to his grandfather and says, "Can I have a cigar?" Little Johnny's grandfather looks down at little Johnny and replies, "Can your penis touch your butthole?" "Well, no," said little Johnny. "Well, then I guess you can't have a cigar." A few days go by and little Johnny sees his grandfather drinking a beer. Says, "Can I have a beer?" Little Johnny's grandfather looks down at little Johnny and replies, "Can your penis touch your butthole?" "Well, no," said little Johnny. "Then I guess you can't have a beer," stated the grandfather smugly. A few more days go by. The grandfather notices little Johnny with a large plate of chocolate chip cookies. The grandfather asks, "Did Grandma make those cookies?" "Yes," little Johnny said, smiling. The grandfather asks, "Can I have a cookie?" "Your grandmother's cookies are my favorite." Little Johnny looks up at his grandfather and says, "Can your penis touch your butthole?" The grandfather grinned and replied, "Why, yes, it can." Little Johnny smiled and then said, "Then you can go screw yourself. Grandma made these cookies for me." Thank you, everybody. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe, hashtag Mean Gene, all that fun stuff. And if you like this video, tell all your friends, leave a comment down below. And if you didn't like it, then just shut up. And I will see you next time.